Last panel discussion of a very intense 4 weeks program in which we discussed the topics of our Congress from very different perspectives and using also very different case studies. We thought about what to do with a final panel discussion topic-wise, and we decided that we should rather use it as some sort of a reflection and to think beyond everything we have discussed so far, but there's also a chance to come up with suggestions and critical comments, or you can also applaud us if you feel like. And I also have to introduce again our panel, which is by the time no longer so new. I only have to introduce the changes of the plan. As you could guess, I'm not Benjamin Barber. And we also kind of lost our president Palacio, who was also announced to come here. There was also an announcement that a third lady would join us, who finally decided that she rather tries to be on safe ground to catch her flight instead of joining us here. But I'm very happy to welcome again from Luxembourg our friend Erna Hennicot-Schoepges, and from Denmark, Stagetorn. And of course, Mark is here with us, and it's no longer that we pass the microphone back and forth and guide you through the Congress, but now you have both of us. So if we think of what has happened in these intense, sometimes 16 hours of program in the last 4 days, what was the expectation? What is the conclusion to draw? It's kind of a box of chocolates to come here, and you never know what you're going to get. But I think people had an expectation, otherwise they wouldn't have come from so far away and to invest so much time and energy to stay with us here. So what is your conclusion? Would you like to start?
This one is supposed to work, yes. Well, actually, you are taking the words out of my mouth, because when I got the opportunity to come here, I was actually thinking about Tom Hanks. So I'll quote him again. Life is like a box of chocolate, you never know what you get. And when my surrounding people asked me during these last weeks, what do you expect from Berlin? Well, I had bluntly to say that I didn't know. I didn't know whether we would be a small table of 7 people or whether we would be 2,000 people, but sometimes you have just to jump into it. And I dare say that I've not been disappointed. These 4 days have surpassed all my expectations. And I think that they are really what we have a Danish expression saying, that it's a pocket of a little bit of a life. This is what I think I've experienced here. Then also, I'll quote not only Tom Hanks, but also Shakespeare, because in his Hamlet, he let his person say, words, words, words. And I'm sure you will all agree with me that this is what we have been subject to these last days. Words, words, words. And they have been in so many fields, and there's been so many points of opinion, so many subjects, that I'm sure that we have all disagreed with some. We have agreed very much with many of them, and we have got new thoughts into our heads, new fields that we didn't think too much about before. So words, of course, are the basis for all human communication. It's the basis for ever being able to have progress in the world. But I've thought now and then, when I've been sitting here and listening with ears as big as an elephant's, then I've been thinking, but words aren't enough. So I think this is the obligation that we should all bring with us home, remembering all the wonderful words, but also remembering that now each of us has a responsibility to do something, because words aren't enough. In a Danish story that I'll now today it has been so popular with little anecdotes, so I'm going to tell you something from a Danish book, because it was about a very enthusiastic young man. He wanted to go out and he wanted to save everybody in Africa. And then he had an aunt, and the aunt said, well, I have a pain in my back. Could you rub it a bit? And he said, no, I can't, because I'm going to save all the children in Africa. And of course, this gives very well that if you're not going to do something, if you're not going to act in your close surroundings, how should you be able ever to save children in Africa or whatever you are wanting to do? What I mean by saying this is that I suggest that we all, you and we, make a vow to ourselves that coming back, we will remember this expression, a world without walls. And we will, each of us, in our small capacities, try to do something to tear down the walls. Not only those of bricks and walls, but also the human ones. And many of you are students, and I mean, it has just been wonderful for such an old lady like me to meet you and to hear how enthusiastic you are. But I must also say, I don't think you should go home and say, well, now I'll finish my PhD studies and I will finish this and then I'll get a family and then in some far future I'm going to do something. I think that we should, this week, next month, we should all do something. And well, usually vows, you don't tell them to the whole world, but to give you an impression, I have made 2 vows today to myself, kind of concluding what was here. The first is I've acted as mentor for young Turkish women who became lawyers and who wanted to get a career. And I've been working quite with some, but I think I could expand it, maybe take in some more, because I realize that they often have walls of psychological, because their family pattern really doesn't allow them to go out and to make a career. Because making a career, you all know, men know, women know, that at certain times you will have to be absent from your home and you will have to kind of neglect your family. This is the one vow I made to myself. The other is that I happen to be in the condition that I usually once a month I have kind of a saloon where I have not a Western saloon, but I don't know, you could call it a soirée or something like that. It's when I invite maybe 20 people and then there will be one who speaks on a subject and then we'll have an informal discussion. And I can promise you both that during the next year my motive will be world without walls, because I really think it is important. So sit quietly, make a little vow to yourself what you can do. I think this is where it all begins, in yourself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Stagetorn. This is already a pretty clear picture of what will happen as a direct outcome of our Congress. Now, Mrs. Hennicot-Schoepges, what is your picture of the Congress?
I must confess I never was at a meeting of this kind where there were so many dynamic and intelligent questions. So I congratulate the audience, and of course the speeches were so inspiring that it is really a question how to work on it further on. And there are some deeper comments to make. We start with a contradiction. In the first introduction by Professor Barber, it was the theme on nation state and how we go on with nation state and interdependence. How can we broaden up our state thinking and be aware that we are in a global world depending on each other. Today we heard Luc van den Brande about regional policy. So, in the statement of Professor Barber, there was much the question about civil society. And in some other comments, it always was present. Where is civil society? So, my question to the audience and to the organizers is, how shall we go on in the global world creating each year in all the places new democratic bodies, and never questioning what is the outcome of these democratic bodies? Europe never had so many elected people than now at this time. And civil society was never so absent when voting for the European Parliament. So isn't it this contradiction? And what do we have to do to involve civil society? And my personal experience is the more you elect people and you delegate decisions, the more you cut up from reality one part of the population, and the more it gets absent, indifferent, and negative towards politics as a whole and towards politicians in detail. There is something else I should wish to have initiated. And in many statements, there was a quest for values. We had this morning Mr. Kassoulidis on Cyprus. It was not mentioned that the problem of Cyprus could have been, in the very beginning, in the 60s, a problem of religious communities. And I think we cannot talk about walls without talking about religion as the belief of each individual person or his atheism, and about religions as structures, as bodies of power. And one of the most challenging questions is how will this century deal with these questions. We had a European value study at the European level from University of Maastricht, and it says very clear that the citizen has spirituality in his personal objectives, but how to deal with it as a state and how to deal with it as a global society. If we don't believe that there could be the clash, nobody wants a clash, we should think over what André Malraux said, and he said it in the 50s, 1954. He said, le 21e siècle devra réintégrer les dieux. Les dieux. So he was aware it's not only one, it's pluralism. And we should deal with this concern strongly and deeply. Of course, I finish and I say my frustration about the debate on European Union could perhaps have a follow-up as debating over the situation of European Union today is so difficult and so immensely technical. To show how it works